everybody. I just want to go over some basic kind of maintenance and safety tractor information. This is New Entry's smaller tractor. It's a Kubota L4330. We use this for kind of all our secondary tillage and in-field work. What's on the back right now is the Perfecta, and I basically just want to go over kind of what you should be keeping your eyes on really every time before you hop on it for the first time that day, and then kind of over the course of a season or a year, what kind of maintenance and work you should be doing and things to keep an eye out for so that keep your tractors running as best as possible. So when you get out in the morning before you turn it on, it's always nice to do a walk around. There's a bunch of really simple things you should look out for. You want to make sure that your tires are inflated. So you want to walk around and look at all four of those. You also want to be looking at all the bolts on your tires. You want to make sure that you're not missing any. You want to make sure they're not loose. Again, you're probably not going to do this every day, but it's good to get in the habit of checking it out every so often. Because if you forget to check them ever, you could run into a problem with them falling off, and that's no fun. The other thing to be out on the lookout for is just, especially if you have it parked on like a nice clean gravel area like this, make sure there's no puddles underneath. There's all different kinds of petroleum products that are loaded up on this, and we'll go through how to check the levels on a bunch of them. But generally, if you see like a stain or a spot or a puddle beneath your tractor, that's probably a good indicator that something is amiss. The other thing to look out for as you walk around, and I'll highlight this here, is even if you don't see a puddle, you might see kind of some wet spots, and maybe this isn't even so obvious here, but I know we have a small leak somewhere around here, and you can see kind of all that grime is coming out because there's probably some sort of seal here that needs to be replaced that has a really small leak. I'm not going to do anything about it in the middle of July because I don't necessarily have time or expertise to fix it, but it's good to keep an eye on. And if it would get any worse, I would know that I need to take it out of operation and get that fixed. I know that the gas gauge doesn't work, so especially if other people have been using it, I'll check to see if there's diesel in here. And there's probably enough to go for a couple hours. The important thing to know about diesel engines generally is that diesel, the combustion process is a bunch different than gas. And so, if you're riding your car and you run out of gas, it's a big deal in that you need to call AAA and you can't go anywhere, but as soon as gas goes in, you're usually good to go. With diesel, the minute you run out of fuel, air gets into the system, and before you can start the engine again, you need to bleed all that air out. And depending on the tractor and the fuel system and how well you know it, that's a process that could take anywhere from like 5 minutes to like a couple hours if it's a really frustrating day. So making sure that you have enough diesel to get you through whatever your next task is really important. So some of the kind of, that would be the stuff you're checking on more or less an everyday basis. Just making sure that there's nothing kind of obviously wrong before you get going is always a really good start. We can pop open the hood and look at a couple of the more kind of seasonal checks you can make, or a couple times a season, depending on how much you're using your tractor. A lot of these things are very similar to systems in your car or anybody else's car. The big difference is that you can't generally just roll down your tractor to the shop to get someone else to take a look at it, or the amount that you would have to pay to have somebody like change your oil on your tractor is completely out of proportion with what that would cost to get it done on your car. So it's nice to be able to at least be familiar with some of these systems and know how to do it kind of on that once a year basis. So as far as engine oil goes, the dipstick's over here. Again, really similar to your car. Take out the dipstick. This is desperate for an oil change, which depending on our time today, Ben and I might do. Clean it off. Yeah, so we have plenty of oil. It's dirty and gross, but there's plenty there. That's probably the best, better than not having enough. So our oil's good. This is going to be our coolant reservoir. That might be, you should be able to see some at the bottom. That might be a little bit low. I should probably top that off. You can also check it over here. You never want to check that when it's hot. And then the other thing that you would want to keep an eye on a couple times a year this is your air filter. Big black plastic piece is the casing. It actually has a two-piece element. So you have this finer blue element on the inside, and then this slightly thicker element on the outside. And basically, if you're doing really dusty work, if you're doing a ton of mowing, it's good to just take this out, and then you can just use an air compressor and blow it out once or twice a year. You don't even have to buy a new one, but that's a good check. And these are the kinds of things that's good to know. If your tractor starts belting white smoke, or if you're not getting as much power as you should be, something like an air filter that's too dirty is a good simple check, because that's something that would prevent enough air from getting pulled in to run the system efficiently. If you can blow that out and solve the problem, that's going to save you so much time and money versus like taking it down to the mechanic and having them do that for you, or at least you've ruled out some of the more simple problems. Along that line as well, so down here we have the water separator. So that comes off of the fuel system, and that works to take out impurities, water in your fuel. So like if it's raining when you fill it up, something like that. Again, good thing to know, similar to what I said about the air filter, if things aren't running right, you're not sure why, a good start can be turning off your fuel system, taking out this water separator, cleaning it out, and maybe changing your fuel filter and seeing if that clears up the problem. Most tractors will have another fluid system beyond the fuel system, and that's the hydraulic fluid system. And so the hydraulics are what's going to run all your steering, all your implements. It's basically what's running everything but the engine. And that's going to be this little dipstick back here. Yeah, so that's a lot clearer because it doesn't run through the engine the same way that engine oil does, and it actually looks like there is plenty. It's just hard to see because it's actually clean. But good to check that a couple times a year. And again, if your hydraulics aren't responding very well, instead of freaking out and saying like, I need to take this to the mechanic right away, check your hydraulic oil, and maybe that just needs to be topped off. Or check your tractor before you get on it, and maybe there's a puddle sitting underneath it and you realize you have a leak in your hydraulic system. So just good to know how things relate a little bit, and also make sure that you're reading your operator's manual pretty carefully so that you're putting the right fluid in the right reservoir. Because even if you think you're solving a problem by adding oil to your hydraulic reservoir, if you're adding engine oil instead of hydraulic oil, you're going to cause much bigger problems than the ones you're trying to solve. And then the last basic maintenance thing I'll go over is just how to use a grease gun. But this is a grease fitting. Basically, anywhere where metal's going to be kind of rubbing up against metal, it's really good to lubricate it to extend the life of it. And these little points right here are basically intakes for grease, so that you can efficiently protect that metal and add some petroleum to the process. So you just fit it on. Usually 3 or 4 squeezes will do, and you basically, at the most, you want to wait till you see, so that's new grease that I'm just putting in. And probably the best thing to do would be to clean that up, because that's just going to, kind of fall off as I'm driving. But once it starts coming out the other end, then I know that I've put in enough. As far as controls go, we're not going to get too deep into this, because I think if you're going to drive a tractor, you either need much more thorough instruction or much more time, but I'll just kind of go over what everything does and where it's all located. This is the most simple lever. This one adjusts the height of your steering wheel. Nothing tricky about that. And then as far as pedals go, on the right we have the brake. Cool thing about tractor brakes is they actually have individual brakes for the left and right tires, so you can make really tight turns. So like if I were to press that down, this tire would stop and I'd essentially be swiveling around it. Or I can just hit them both at once for a conventional brake. This is the clutch, so every time I want to stop the tractor or change gears, that's what I'm using. And then this tractor has 3 different sets of kind of gear shifters. Over here, we have the high range and the low range. For some reason, tractor companies like using animals. So there's a bunny and a turtle. Bunny is high gear, that's gonna go faster. Turtle is low gear, that's gonna go slower. Our other tractor actually has a snail as well for what's called creeper gear. Yeah, I guess someone, really liked the story of the tortoise and the hare once upon a time. So this will determine kind of your initial speed range, and then after that you have gears 1 through 4. So basically for a system like this, what you're thinking of is you have 8 different speeds. You can be in low 1 through 4 or high 1 through 4. And then you also have your forward and backward lever right here. So there's 2 different ways to accelerate. You have the gas pedal right here, or you can just set it with a lever. Either way works. And then over here, this is the lift arm that controls the rear hydraulics. So this will lift up whatever implement you have attached to that 3-point hitch, up and down. These control the remote hydraulics, so if you have an implement that isn't running off that 3-point hitch, but is running off of hydraulic lines connected, like our big disc set that we highlighted earlier in the class, that's what you would use for this. And then this will turn your power takeoff on or off. So if you have something hooked up to the PTO back there, a PTO implement would hook up. So when you turn on that PTO switch, this will start spinning. And so if you have like something like a mower that has a spinning part, to get the mower to activate, to get that blade moving, you would turn on, it would attach right here, you would turn on the PTO switch, and that's when it would start spinning your mower. And that's the basic operation of the tractor.